So welcome back aliens, I'm Navin Reddy from Telusko Learnings, and in this video we'll talk about loops. Now if you remember, in Java we have different types of loops, right? In fact, the same loops are there in C and C++ as well. Now in fact Java has one more loop which is not there in C or C++, which is for each loop. But let's not talk about that right now. Let's go for those three basic loops. Now, just to show you demonstration, we have this three type of loops, right? We have while loop, we have do while loop, and we have for loop. Now, when you talk about while loop, what is this? This is a precondition loop, right? So first we check for the condition, and then we execute this statement, whatever you want to do. In do while, what we do is we first execute, and then we'll check for the condition. That means at least it will execute once. Now the same thing remains for Kotlin as well. So these two loops run exactly the same way in Kotlin. But when you talk about for loop, let's go back to Java and let's discuss why do we have while and do while, because there's one difference. In do while loop, even if your condition is false, this will execute at least once, right? That means first you are doing something and then you are checking for the things. Okay, this is okay. So this is the main difference between while and do while. But then what is the difference between for and while? The only difference you might be thinking is you write this in 3 lines. You first initialize the value, then you check for the condition, and then you do increment decrement. In for loop, you do that in 1 line. Other than that, we have one more difference, which is you should be using for loop whenever you know the range of values, and we should be using while loop when you are not when you don't know then what is the range. It may be depend upon some external condition. Example, let's say if you have a file and you want to read all the data of a file, how would you know how many characters we have there? Maybe you're talking to someone using a chat application. How would you know when to end the chat? In that case, you can use a while condition because it is based on the condition, not on the values. On the other hand, when you talk about for loop, it always works with a range, right? So it is always recommended that we use for loop when you know the range. Example, when you work with arrays, when you work with array list, when you want to print lots of numbers, we use for loop there because we have a specific starting point. We have a specific ending point. Now, keeping this thing in mind, Kotlin has made changes in for loop. The while loop and do while loop remain same, but then when you talk about a for loop, it works in a different way. Now, even before going for a for loop, I want to discuss you about a concept called as range. Now, what is range? Example, if I create a variable here, and if I say var, and if I say nums equal to, now I want to have a range of values from 1 to 5. So what we can do is we can say 1, and then we can put 2 dots here and we can say 5. Now again, it depends upon you if you want to put a space between, because I like spaces, but then that's fine. It depends upon you. You want to go for 1 dot 5, or you can also say 1 space dot 5, space 5. I'm a big fan of spaces, so I will use space. I do tend to use space everywhere, but then you can use this syntax as well. So what we are doing here is we got this nums here, which is a range now. This is not a normal variable now. This is a range, and this range has 5 values. But how do you know what values we have? And the way you can do that is by using a for loop. Now the way you can print these values is by saying for, the same syntax, the same keyword. We don't have another keyword here. We got for, but internal in this bracket, what you have to write. So if you remember the for each loop of Java, let me just go back to my Sublime and let's define a for each loop. Let's say we have an array called as nums. So how do we use a for each loop in Java is we say, hey, I want to fetch the values in int format. So we'll say int I, or maybe int a colon nums, right? So this is for each loop in Java. Again, normally I refer these loops as enhanced for loop for my for my example. So I call this enhanced for loop. Okay, the same syntax you can use in Kotlin, but okay, with minor changes, of course. So what we will do here is we'll simply say a in num. So instead of giving colon, we say in, and we don't have to specify the type of this a because it is obvious, right? When you have nums which are of type int, of course this a would be of type int. Okay, it says typo. Oh, that's fine. Okay, and now let's print the value of a. Now we can print the value directly. We can say a here, and it will print all the 5 values. Let's see if it is working or not. Let's run this code. And you can see we got the output which is from 1 to 5. That's simple, right? So when you have a range of values, you can simply define 1 dot 5 and it will print the range for you. Okay. Okay. Now what we can also do is, let's say if I want to go from 1 to 10, can we do that? So maybe 1 to 15. Let's do that. Let's say 1 to 15 and maybe 16. Sorry for those values. And let's run this code. Okay, now if you see the output, it says 1, 2, 3, 4, and everything goes till 16, right? So that's how you can work with a range. But then what if you want to go for different steps? Example, here we are incrementing the value by 1, right? Because that's how your for loop normally works. What if you want to increment this by 2, maybe 5, maybe 10? That's easy. You can define one more thing called as step. So you can say step 1, or you can say step 2, or you can say step 3. I mean, you can go with that as well. So time being, I will say step 2 because step 1 is by default. If I run this code by saying step 2, of course you can imagine the you can imagine the you can imagine the answer, right? You can say it is 1, 3, then 5. Let's run this. Okay, and you can see the output here where we got 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. I mean, it goes on, right? So the step which we are taking here is of 2. Again, you cannot see 16 there because after doing step 2, it is printing 17, right? And we don't have that value here. The range goes from 1 to 16 only. Okay, so that's how we can use step. Okay, now what if you want to print these values in descending order? So I want to start from 16 and I want to go till 1. So can we do this something like this? We can say 16 to 1. If you try this, in fact, I would recommend you to pause this video and try this, and yes, you will not get the answer, right? So you're getting from 16 to 1, and the answer you will not get the answer from 16 to 1 for sure. Okay, so how to do that? How can we do that here? So in that case, we cannot use dot dot. We have to use another keyword or another keyword called as down to. So we have to say down to space. So we have to say 16 down to 1. Okay, I know that sounds more like English, right? But yes, so Kotlin makes your programming much more easier. It is 16 down to 1. But then, okay, first of all, let's run this code. Let's see if it is working or not. Then we'll discuss. Okay, and you can see we got the output here, which is from 16 to 1, right? Now, question arises, can we use a keyword between two numbers? Because see, it works here, but then think in a programming way. Okay, how can we use a keyword in between? Now what happens, this down to is actually a method. Okay, I know you will not believe this. Now this method belongs to, okay, if I click on this, okay, you can see down to is a method which belongs to a int class. Okay, so we have a int class here. It belongs to, so when we say int dot down to, it takes a int parameter and it returns something. Doesn't matter what it returns. So that means we can simply say 16 dot, which is a method, right? So 16 is an object of integer, and we can say 16, which is an object, dot down to, and we can pass the object itself. So actually down to is a method, but then to make it more readable, what Kotlin says is you can directly write 16 space down to 1. So even this will work. So you can use dot down to 1, or we can use 16 space down to 1. It's your choice. Again, people who are coming from Java background, they would love to go for 16 dot down to in bracket 1. But if you are learning directly Kotlin, in fact, soon after some time I'll be making Kotlin videos for beginners as well. If you don't know any programming language, you can learn Kotlin as well. So I'm planning for that also. In that, I will explain you only in the Kotlin terms. But then since this playlist is based for Java developers, so I'm going in this way. So it works in that way as well. So we can say down to. Okay, so we can use 1 to 10 and 1 to down to. So yeah, we'll say 1 to 10, 1 to 16 again. Okay, now we have one more thing. We have this concept of less than. Now, if you remember in for loop, we say int I equal to 1, and this we say I less than 16. So we never say, let's say if you have an array, if you have a list of values where the number of values is 16, but of course you have to end at 15, right? Now, how can you end at 15 here? Even if you specify a value 16, the intention was to end it at 15 itself. So instead of using dot dot here, we can also use until. So when I use until, it means it will take 1, but it will not take 16. It will take only till 15. Let's run this code. So you can see we got the output, which is 1, and it goes till 15, and we don't have 16 there. So that's how your until works, right? So we know about down to now, we know about until, we know about that dot dot operator. But what if you want to print everything in a reversing order? Example, I want to go from 1 to 15, but then I don't want to print from 1 until, I don't want to print 1 to 3, 4, I want to print 15 and then it goes to 1. So there are multiple ways. The one way is you can go for is by using a method called as reversed. So when I say nums.reverse, it will reverse all the values. And let's see what happens now. And as you can see, we got the output here. It starts from 15 and it goes till 1. So if you are using until and if you are limiting till 15, you can also use reverse to get all the reverse values. Okay, now with this, I have one more question. Now I'm directly using a method here, right? So we got this nums. That makes sense because nums is a variable. But what is a type of nums? Because Java is a strict language, right? A type-safe language to be specific. What type of value we have here? What is nums? So if I click on this reversed, it's a method, right? So if I click on this reversed, you can see it belongs to a class called as range. So this class has some more methods here. So what I can do here is I can actually print some more properties here. I will say nums dot. There's a method called as, let's say, count. So using this method count, you can actually print you can print the number of values you have, right? We can also print count is, and we can give a dollar. Okay, we can give plus, or we can also use dollar symbol there. Let's run this. Okay, and you can see we got the output as count is 15. So we have this method count. We can also use some properties. So I would recommend you to explore more on this. What are the other properties we have here? Okay, so yeah, so that's how you use we use range and loop. We have one more thing. We can also work when you talk about range. We can also work with characters. Example, I will remove this now. So we can also have a range of characters. We can say capital A dot dot to maybe small z. So we will get the entire range. Let's try this. In fact, I've never tried this before. Let's try. Because we can go from capital A to capital Z. We can go from small a to small z. Let's go for this range, which is capital A to small z. Let's see what happens. If you can see this, you can see we got all A, B, C, D till Z. And then we got some special symbols in between. And then we got A, B, C, D. Now, if you know about the ASCII range, you're getting from the value 65, which is A. We are going till 122, which is Z, small z, right? So we can also use characters here because even character gets converted into the ASCII values, right? So yeah, that's it. We have worked with loop and range in this video. So I hope you liked this video. Do click on the like button and do share this video with your friends. Thank you so much for watching and do subscribe.